All right, so I'm going to make a little video just kind of explaining the shots used on forest with jumping, how to get a hole in one on each hole. Some of them are really easy and some of them are pretty complicated, so we'll try and point out things like markers and timing and, how to line up your power and things like that. And maybe I'll try and explain a couple of tips along the way for things that I do. So we'll go ahead and run through forest, but it's possible to get a hole in one on every single hole with regular jumping. So we will try them all out. Just a couple different ways to do this one. You can do the regular shot where you bounce off both walls, which is usually pretty simple, but with jumping you can just go right over. I think like 1.2 to 1.3 power, just aim directly at the flag and then jump and you're in. The shot's always easy. It's only like 1.7, 1.8 power, dead center. Easy peasy. This one can be complicated if you try and use no jumping. This one, it's fairly straightforward. If you want to try and line it up with the blocks in front of us, like my little arrow is pointing at the intersection right here, I would call that like half a block forward, and then go up another block. I would call that 1.5 blocks forward. So we use that to kind of mark, to call out exactly where we're aiming and whatnot. So half, 2 blocks forward. Let's call it 2 blocks to the left. You probably don't even need to go that far. I wouldn't even go quite that far. Maybe a little bit right of that. You see the dark green part of the bush right where my pointer is pointing right now, something like that. I think about 1.2 to 1.3 power, and you just jump. It's going to be about the easiest thing. This one's always pretty simple. I just do a hair over 2 power. I think just 2 bars works totally fine. In fact, let's try it just to see. And I'm just going to time it shortly after the flap is at the very bottom. That way I'll miss it when it's on its upswing. Yeah, so 2 bars right in the middle. It's just timing on that one, but that's not bad. This one's always one of the easiest. I guess it's kind of easy to mess up, but 3 bars of power aimed directly at the flag. Just make sure your aiming is good. It can look like you're aiming right at the flag, but you're slightly off to the right, so just take a moment to try and line it up as cleanly as you can. Right in. Nice. The way that I do this one, the idea is that you're just going to ramp right off this ramp here. You're not going to use jump for anything. And you either hit this first piece of wood or the grass right after it, but you'll get some good bounces, which will bounce you over the hole, hit off the back wall, and then go back into the cup. And I try and line it up just a hair under 2.5 bars of power. I would call it like 2.45 if you want to be like specific or whatever. Let's try that. Yeah, it was a good bounce. Right in. That's usually how it goes. It is possible for that to go wrong, and there are other setups, but that's just what I use. What I do here is, again, using the blocks in front of us to tell our marking. 1 block forward, 2 blocks to the right, that little corner right there. If you want to, you can also try and aim. If you see where my front yellow mark is, it's kind of covering it up right now. Yeah, there we are. It's kind of pointing at a light spot on the wall. I used to use that as a marking, but I don't like doing that as much anymore. When you use the tiles on the ground, it's much more specific. So I like to aim at that mark right there. One block forward, 2 over to the right side. And then I do just like a hair over 2 bars. Like you can see the yellow filling up. It's like 2 ticks, something like 2 ticks. Not much, because if you do too much, it can backfire. Just like that. Yeah, that was close, but it worked. if you try that out with a little bit of practice, you can kind of see how it can fail. It can hit that middle ramp piece and deflect you off in a wrong direction. This is one of the most broken shots ever, and I still don't understand why it works. You're going to bounce off this right wall at full speed, and you're going to somehow hit the cup from like underneath into the side. I think you actually clip through part of this brick wall right here in order to get there. Something must be scuffed with it. So anyway, the marking is real easy. Same thing as last time, really. One block forward, 2 to the right. You can actually go a little bit right of that as well. If you go a little bit left, it'll fail, but there's a little bit of leeway if you aim slightly to the right of this. And then full power. And then you just want to time it so that this spinning thing in the middle isn't going to block you and, you know, stop your ball. So right now, again, that's ridiculous. I don't understand why it works, but it just works. The most consistent thing that I found for this, like, there are different ways you can do it, and sometimes I would actually recommend it, but whatever. 2.3 straightforward, dead center. You'll bounce off the back wall and get into this. And I'm going to reset this in a second, or, well, I'll just keep it going. If you ever, like, sometimes when you're in these tubes, it's possible to have too much speed, and then you're going to get a bad roll at the end of this. So what you can do is when you're inside the tube, like the tube goes down, and then it starts moving horizontal, it bends horizontal, and then you exit. Once it's bent horizontal, try and jump while you're in the tube. You'll hit the top of the tube and slow down. And that way you can lose some momentum inside the tube. It's a little bit more controlled. So right here, I'll drop in, jump. That way I didn't have too much momentum when I was out. And sometimes if you have too much momentum, you'll spin out of that funnel and you'll lose the hole in one shot. This one is great. I used to have a really horrible marking for it, but it's gotten a lot better and it's super simple. So it's a timed shot. You're going to have to time your shot when both of these paddles in front of us are in sync. They're like right in the same cycle. And at one point, we'll see it here in a moment, you're going to see when they both line up perfectly vertical. And that's when you're going to know to release your shot. It's coming up here now. That's when you would release your shot, is when they're both perfectly vertical, like lined up with this line directly in front of you. That's when to release. The marking for it is also really simple, and I think there's a little bit of wiggle room. Not much, but it's 5 blocks forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1 to the left. And you want to aim 3.3 power. So 5 blocks forward, 1 left, 3.3 power, and then time it when both paddles are perfectly vertical. Easy peasy. Look at this. It's so good. There's another way where you can jump back to the hole behind, but that marking and timing works very, very well. So I would definitely recommend doing it that way. This one is also pretty easy, similar to last one. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks forward, 1 to the right, and you want to aim full power on this one. You want to be, there's a little bit of wiggle room on this, but I've also seen it go wrong. You saw how I spun around the rim of the cup. I can't remember if I'd have to compensate a little bit left or right to make that go directly into the hole, but you may want to just mess around with it. This one is hard to do, but I'll try and explain it as best I can. The marker that I'm aiming at, like, I don't have a good clean marker. What I'm trying to aim at is basically in between. You see this group of bolts, 2 on the left, 2 on the right. From where I am at spawn, I'm looking at the left 2, and I'm trying to aim directly between the 2 of them. Like, you can see how the top portions kind of jut out and are a little more distinct. You try and aim at the middle of those 2, like at the center, but aim slightly to the right side of that. And what you're going to do is jump over this first board that's right in front of us here. You're going to bounce off that back wall, and you're going to ricochet and go directly into the cup. If you have the right line and you're able to jump immediately with the right power, which here should be about 1.9, you can see it's pretty close to 2. Not quite. But the hard part is getting this to line up. Like, this is something I do a lot, and I don't know if other people do it, but I'll mess around with my zoom level a lot in order to make this shot easier. So I'm trying to use different zoom levels until it's easy for me to see both tops of those bolts. And that's just going to be something you have to figure out for yourself. Like right now, I'm having trouble seeing one of them. I can see one, but not the other. it's just a hard shot to line up. So we'll try this. And I aim the middle of those 2 bolts, slightly to the right. Yeah, that'll go in. It's surprisingly consistent, but it takes a little bit of practice to get the feeling for it. But that's a good lineup. This is another easy one. So you're going to bounce off these walls. You're just going to aim over here at the right side. You can see where the group of bolts is. I think I aim basically at the center of the leftmost of those bolts. You can also see this seam in the wood. You really don't ever want to aim directly at the seam of 2 pieces in a map, because if you hit, it's very possible to hit the corner instead of the flat side, and you'll get a really weird bounce. So you really want to avoid hitting that seam where 2 pieces intersect. So what we aim is 3 bars of power, and it would be just ever so slightly right of that. So that kind of lines up with that bolts right above it that you can see. So you can get an idea for it. There's also a little bit of wiggle room on this shot. So, and that's also really nice because it doesn't require jumping. So many of these shots don't require jumping and are easy enough to pull off in classic mode. So it's pretty nice. This one, I have a nice marking for it. So I know people were aiming at these bolts back here in order to get this lined up. What you're going to do is aim about 1 1/4. It's really like 1.25. It's kind of specific power. If you go a little bit too much, it's going to be hard to jump, and you might get a bad bounce afterward. And if you go too little, you might end up bouncing off the top of this wood board right here, and you don't want that happening. You're going to jump over this first board, and you want to clear the second one, land on the green area here, and you're going to bounce off that back wood beam and go directly into the cup. You have to have specific aiming for that to work. And what I found was that instead of aiming at the bolts back there, that's what I think most people are doing right now, there are 2 very light marks on the top of this wood board. I'm kind of focused at the center of them right now. I aim at the very middle of them. You can see it's like light spot, and there's a little bit of, dark brown in the middle of it. And I aim at that. 1 1/4 power. And then you just got to be ready to jump immediately. And boom, there you go. I found that really, really consistent. I couldn't get it lined up with using the bolts, but using the light markings on the wood board helped me a lot. This is by far the most difficult one. So the goal is to do about 2.5 power, jump over these wood boards, the wood board right in front of us. You'll ride along in the grass for so long, and then for me, it feels like the timing is very specific on this second jump. You're going to jump over the wood board, ride the grass, jump again, and get up over this barrier and go into the cup. And it's really hard to pull off. So what I try and aim at, you can see this wood board in front of us. There's like 3 dark markings on the top where the vertical and horizontal edges meet. And I try to aim at the center of those dark markings. Like you can kind of see, I'm aiming at, my cursor is aimed at the very bottom of the board, but I'm trying to line up with the dark spots above them at the top of that board. It's hard to aim. I don't know exactly. This is one I don't understand quite as well. It feels like a combination of very specific aiming down here and then very specific timing on the second jump. And I don't know how to explain it, but I kind of use the patches of grass, honestly. Like there's a section in the middle here where there's like a thick line of them going across. You can kind of see I'm focusing on it. And I think I roughly aim for that or the very end of that segment. I'm not sure. But I just kind of get a feeling for it and hope for the best. So let's see what happens here. It might take a couple of tries. 2.5 seems good. You do want a fair amount of power, not a crazy amount. Oh my, that went in. First try. So that's how you do that one. I'm really surprised that worked. You'll want to do that a bit in practice to figure that one out. Now, there are a couple different ways to do this one, and I'm not going to... There's another method that I think is actually easier than what I'm about to perform, but I haven't done it enough to really want to rely on it, so I'm just going to do my main shot here. You aim full power at the flag, and that wood board that's going back and forth, You just want to wait until it starts moving away from us. Like it gets to the end of its cycle there and it starts bouncing back the other way. So I'll just wait for it here and go. Yeah, so that should be fine. God, this one is tough. So the idea, there are different ways of doing this. With jump, you can jump over these, but I don't know the power to do it, and the timing can be kind of specific depending on your power, so I'm not going to attempt that. There's a lower power shot that you can do. It's something like 1.1 power, and you aim directly at the pin, but it's very precise on the power, and it's very easy to mess that up. So I started... I think I saw someone else using a different method, and I eventually picked it up and worked on it, and I think I have it half consistent. The marker that I'm using is well beyond this hole. It's at the next hole. The next hole is hole 18, and you'll start off on this and get launched across and have to go through that building and blah, blah, blah. But you can see the light bulbs hanging down inside that building, and you can see them here back at spawn. And I'm moving my camera around. Just past the light bulbs and to the left is a tree. And I'm looking at the brown, you know, the trunk, the stem, whatever it's called. I'm basically trying to aim at the rightmost edge of that brown trunk of that tree. That's my marker. That's as best as I can explain it. You want to aim left of the light bulbs, but you don't want to aim dead center of the tree trunk. You want to aim to the right edge of that tree. So... we'll try it and see what happens here. It's also really tough to line this up just because of how far away it is. And you can't really get your cursor lined up very well. So it's easy to mess up. It worked there. And this last one is annoying. What you have to do here in order to get it in one, you have to use 3 bars of power and immediately jump over this beam, which that's very fast timing. That may take you some practice. You're going to bounce in the grass once. You're going to go in the air. You're going to bounce a second time. You need to jump at the same moment when you land that second bounce. That's going to clear you over this board, go through, and head right to the hole. You also need to time it so that you're not going to get hit by the wood logs as you're doing that. So what I generally do is 3 bars of power, and it's hard to line this up with the flag. What I do to try and help me line it up, again, I'm using my camera to like zooming and movement with the camera to try and line this up as easily as I can for myself. So what I'm going to do, I don't want the camera super zoomed in because I need to be able to see when the ball is going to bounce in the grass. So I need a bit of distance in order to make that work. So the camera can't be too zoomed in. But I just try and line up the bottom of the pin with the very top of that wood beam. It kind of roughly helps me line up this shot. Because lining this up with the flag from this far away is not easy. It's very easy to go ever so slightly right, and you'll just be off. And this is also why sometimes I'll wiggle back and forth right before I finalize aiming to make sure it feels right. The other problem I have here with this is I couldn't see the wood logs. Like, I couldn't get the timing right because I couldn't see them. So, we'll set it up one more time. Okay, we'll try it. Oh, man. That is forest with every single hole in one with jumping turned on. That's the first time I've ever done that. Well, that was kind of an impromptu tutorial I made. And as far as I know, that's the first time I've ever done it. I actually don't know if anyone's ever done that. That might be a world's first, actually, of all fucking things. So yeah, sorry about that. I'm pretty stoked about that. I was playing this course earlier tonight, And I had another round where I got a hole in one and on all the holes. It was finally hole 18, and I messed up that second bounce in the grass. So I really wanted to take my time and line up that shot. So yeah, apologies for that. But that's how you do it. That's how you do forest with jumping and hole in ones on every single hole. So I hope that helps a little bit. I tried to explain the markings and like timings that I use and things like that. There's a lot more complicated stuff, like not really complicated, but there's a lot of things that take practice. And this game has a surprisingly decent skill ceiling. So, you know, some good practice, you can actually get pretty good at this game. So hope that helps some people. I might do other courses sometime. I doubt I'll actually get real 18s on them. There are a few good workshop maps where it's very possible to get a perfect game going. And some of them still have a little bit of luck involved. Some of the official maps have some pretty interesting shots. So if I don't know if there's any interest, I may make more guides, tutorials, and stuff like that. I have a lot of fun playing this game and would like to share some of what I've learned with you. So if you're interested, just let me know. Thanks.